we need to almost democratize environmentalism and say everyone is an environmentalist. Everyone loves beauty, everyone loves the flora, we love fauna. Everything is integral. Islam is fact-driven and not superstition-driven. So it's important for them then to know what the facts are. The Quran says that do not dwell or go into anything of which you do not have accurate knowledge. The Arabs and Muslims have brought science to the world. They were responsible for the Renaissance. So if science is so much part of their tradition, they are the first people then to embrace that science. Muslims admire the Pope very much, especially Saint Francis. There's a beautiful story of the Saint Francis, not Pope Francis, and Saint Francis' communication with Malik al-Kamil was a nephew of Saladin in Egypt. And those understandings between Saint Francis and Malik al-Kamil have been honored over the centuries. So Muslims are great admirers not only of Pope Francis but also his predecessors, especially John Paul II. So they watch that very closely. They read it very closely. There's always many things happening even in the Arab and Muslim world that doesn't get much publicity. I went to Mali, where there's a very large percentage of Muslims down south in Bamako. Went to the escarpments, and in the remote villages I found solar panels on the mosques, on top of the mosque. You travel throughout the Muslim world now on solar panels, wind farms. Turkey is another example. I traveled to 8 cities in Turkey a few years ago, and I found solar panels everywhere in the country. So I don't think the Muslims are just talking about it, they are doing it. You know, and I feel proud of that.
Many of the countries that will be most immediately affected by climate change have significant Islamic populations.
Yeah, Bangladesh, for instance, with the floods and many of those places, they are quite aware of that, and I think many of them are beginning to do things about it. I hope they could do more, but the Muslims have the largest number of refugees, too many wars taking place. Other communities come in and want their water and their oil and bomb these places into, stone ages. That's unfortunate. So they are struggling for survival, and often environmental issues become luxury. The Quran has, there are almost 6,236 verses. Out of those 6,236 verses, almost 5,000 verses deal just with nature. So some of the chapters of the Quran are the cow, the bee, the ant, the camel, the elephant. So the names of animals, the name of trees. So anyone who studies the Quran closely and knows that God is beauty, God loves beauty, and we are stewards of God on this earth, and we have to be caretakers of God's creation. And I think one of the primary issues we also need to tackle is the way we treat other human beings. I'm appalled at the war culture that is out there, the $9.63 trillion war industry, the wars for oil, the wars for water. These are horrible wars, and we need to speak out. It's also damaging the environment. So if the war industry buys in then with the anti-climate change, because some of them are destroying the ecology in other parts of the world, even not in our side, then we need to point that out and call them out. Human beings is God's prime creation, and as God's prime creation, they are stewards over the rest of God's creation. The Quran calls every community of birds and animals as a ummah. The word ummah means a nation on its own. So we have the nation of the birds, the nation of the dogs, and all those. Even the ants speak in the first person in the Quran, where Solomon knew the language of all the animals, and the animals speak. So I think every Muslim who reads the Quran closely should be pro-environment, pro-animals, procreation of God, and even out of space, the junk we send in out of space, that's also something that should concern us. It's important also to know that Islam preaches optimism. So it's one thing just to cry out, this is happening, this is, at the same time we must say, but this is how we're going to fix it. So being part of the solution is extremely important. The Quran encourages us to become hillun li hadha al-balad or hallun li hadha al-balad, which means becoming a solution to every town and every nation. We must become people of the essence. The Quran uses the word ulul albab, meaning people who are able to go to the root of things. They have a very nuanced and deep and understanding of things. So together with that, having some optimism and knowing that every faith tradition rejects greed. We know what greed in this country led to the Dust Bowl, and for 3.5 years, with that dust just destroying entire communities. We must have mechanisms in place to check our greed, and then to have the great ideals of our tradition. Like the Dalai Lama admires Islam as for its ethic of pure altruism. Make sure that those ideals shine out, and we don't have very sorry or sad realities that are so far removed from those ideals. So greed is not part of that equation, but altruism is, and having solutions, having a deeper understanding, and also believing that with God's assistance that we can make some difference. I believe that not only incremental change, but even quantum leap of change is possible.